Before we begin our presentation of our keynote speaker, I want to acknowledge and thank a few people and board members. First one is, although she hasn't been able to attend here the last 5 or 6 years, she's confided in me that her favorite past event is this one. Kathy Valich.
Oh, she's nice.
Where'd Kathy go? Some of the board members, actually we have a lot of them here today. Tim Daniels, Tom Bacon, James Clausen, you guys can wave your hands, Bob Weaver, Bill Tennant, Steve Carlson, and probably one who does a lot of work for the board for many years. He does the website, he does all our blast emails, he does all our membership. He came over from North Carolina for this event because it's his favorite event too, is Ken Greenberg. And I just wanted to also thank a few locals, members who have helped me put this on. It does take a village and everybody's helped out quite a bit. Cheryl and Rich Purdy. Sue and Dave Erickson. Tom Gowling and Tim Daniels helped me set this all up yesterday. Very, very helpful. Bill Bickle, who's also donated all the coffee, all the he's right over here, all the donuts. And I also wanted to acknowledge Bob Young, who's our editor of our Tool Talk, who's here someplace too. Thank you. All right, on to our main event. So he's going to enlighten us and show off his legendary collection. Keynote speaker, professor, huge
not a professor,
and British Infill Planes, George Anderson.
Thank you, Wes. Thank you for inviting me. My pleasure to be here and bring this stuff up here. So my name is George Anderson, and I was born in Scotland. And that's probably why I collect these, because it's kind of part of my heritage. I'm a professional woodworker. So my path, I did my apprenticeship in Scotland, started at 16, and finished at 20. I still didn't know anything. So I went to Australia. I went to London first, and then I ended up in Australia where I met my wife, and ended up here in Southern California, Orange County. And I applied my trade there, and I think 1999 was an important day for me. I was working with a guy, and we were talking about planes, and he gave me a number 5 Stanley, something he had tinkered with, and it was not the best, but he had added bits and taken away bits, but it sparked something in me. And then the internet had just started, and I went down that path, and now I hunt everywhere for it, and I've come up with this. This is some of my collection. I tried to bring the best. I tried to bring the smaller stuff, because it does end up being very heavy. So, very heavy, as Drew's back will tell you. Anyway, so I have a good cross-section. I think the earliest one is probably around 1840 that I know of, and it goes through the 1930s. That was kind of the war was kind of the death knell of British industry, if you like. Some of the earlier makers, the best ones were the London makers, because there's a cachet. There was a cachet in Britain that the best stuff came from London, and they would mark it London made, and it was, ooh. Later that moved to Sheffield made, but early it was, whoa, this is London made. It's got to be great. So some of the earlier makers are Moon, Towel over here, Syme, and Smith. Smith was gone by 1850, so he is one of the earliest, and then Moon. Norris was one of the later ones. Spears, he was probably in business the longest. There's Matheson here, and Matheson as far as I know, didn't make infill planes. He just bought them from other people. So he bought most of them in from Spears. Spears lived in a small, tiny little village in Scotland. But he traveled to London, and he looked at the London makers and got a lot of design ideas, and was a real go-getter, because he was in business till he died in 1898. Spears and Matheson both died the same year. And then his daughter ran the company, and then it got sold to somebody else. And eventually it petered out in like 1936. So early ones, James?
What about some of these? Were they spin-offs of?
No. These are like provincial makers up here. Yeah, Hay is one of the rarest. It was just a little guy in Scotland. Yeah. I've only ever seen one. There might be more, but I've only ever seen the one. Greenslade was in Bristol, which was a navy town, if you like. A lot of commerce going back and forward. I think the castings were probably made in London, bought in and infilled. These are called infill planes, which is metal infilled. So we call them infills. They were very expensive, probably 3 or 4 weeks' paycheck for one plane. So there was a whole industry of, you could buy the body. I mean, a lot of guys would work in a factory and they'd have a pattern making department, and they'd have the pattern makers make them a casting, and they would fill them, they'd buy the blade. There was no adjuster, so it was pretty easy to make if you had a bit of talent. We call them craftsman planes. Some of them don't look like they were made by actual craftsmen, but these are some of the nicer ones, because it was a lot cheaper. This one here, the guy got it really fancy and carved in it and stuff. Some of them have great shape. You know, they were a really artistic flow to them. I love those. But they're all ebony, rosewood. They use the best material, best that they could afford. And these ones, some of them, like I say, some of the Scottish ones, they would put this heart and shield. This has only got the heart, but this one has the heart and shield. And I think it means for love and honor, but I don't really know. I've never seen it written anywhere. But, you know, you have to think they had pretty poor upbringing. They didn't have a lot of stuff. So I think what you could do is you could make yourself a really bitchin' plane that could show your skills, right? I mean, I always tell my apprentices, I want to see your toolbox. The first thing when you walk on the job, I want to see your toolbox. It shows me what your skill level is. So I think this was the same thing. You could have, hey, I made this. This is what I can do.
But they didn't have any TV back then.
And they had no TV.
And a lot of wasted time.
But some of them, they really made some artful looking stuff. This is a rare Edinburgh maker, Galloway. One of the last makers, I'm sorry if I'm jumping around here, but was Price. So this guy was making bullnose and shoulder planes. That's all he made, and he was making them in a little shed at the bottom of the garden with a little hand-powered grinder. So pretty amazing that he was making these beautiful things with really rudimentary equipment. One of my favorites is this guy, Miller. I think every single plane I've seen of his is different than the next one. So he was trying to beat the monotony. He was little flourishes, little twists, little turns. He was always doing really something unique. And he just made the most, I think, beautiful equipment. I just love them. What else have we got? This is another favorite of mine is Badger. So I think he went out of business in the 1860s. So these are pretty early. And a lot of the other guys took their design cues from him, specifically this guy John Holland. And then Norris took a lot of his design cues from this guy. So there's a lot of, and you have to be a bit of a detective, I find, with this stuff, because a lot of them early on, they never marked them. Marketing wasn't a big thing. They didn't know. It was just make the commodity, sell it, right? Make the next one. So a lot of them, like this one, I don't know specifically exactly who made this, but I have seen another one that is marked. It was identical. And then there's certain design cues, like this one is marked, this one isn't. but it's got certain design cues that I'm saying, history detective, that this was made by this guy. But I don't have it in writing. A lot of it's kind of who made who. Norris, so everybody's heard of Norris, I would think, because he was the last guy, one of the last guys standing, and he came up with this adjuster, which I hate, but people are obsessed with an adjuster, so there you go. Because you always had to loosen this before you adjusted it, and with the Stanley you don't, right? And then this was 4 times what a Stanley cost. So which one are you going to buy, right? I know which one I would buy. I mean, I would love to own this, but if I was a working joiner in London, I'd be buying the Stanley.
Don't be a cheap bastard. Buy the best.
Can't be helped. So they all have their own models. This is called a chariot. It just had this specific shape with the mouth really close to the front, just for getting in close. And it would more be an apron plane and for fitting stuff. So that's the chariot. Then there was the thumb plane, which is, here it's called a block plane. Why it was called a thumb plane, I don't know. Is it the shape? I don't know. To me, these are the hardest to find. I don't think they really sold a lot of them. Yeah, and then this is the late one. Let's add a knob because we need a knob, right? But yeah, it's not the most comfortable. And then you find a lot of them. The guy would take a file to this to make it, because it went in your palm, and that was a bit jagged. This is better, see, because it's flat. I do see a lot of them where they filed. There was a nipple on the end of that, and he's filed that off because it was right here. Not comfortable. But I do like them because I guess just because they're really hard to find. Norris, I think this is an important plane because, well, for one, you go, Norris really made this? Because Norris was always known for the high quality. And this was made during the war, the first war. Because he would get, this is a war contract plane because it has the broad arrow, and the forces would always, the UK government would put that broad arrow on it. And he painted it red, and even Norris was ashamed of these because they just weren't to the quality he would have liked to produce. But during World War I, I don't think you could even buy a tool without having a certificate from the government. You had to have permission to go buy a tool. And they were mainly using up stuff from before the war. So I think it's important just because he was so ashamed of them. And then
you shop on like eBay Europe for this stuff, because you don't see this stuff here.
No. So eBay or I go over. Well, before COVID, I would go over every year for 6 or 7 years. So, and you do find it some. I bought a plane from Dave this morning, so you do find it sometimes, but mainly from back there. Yeah. Now this is another one. So if anybody's read this is the history of Norris. I mean, a brief summation. Thomas Norris died, I think, in 1936, and he had Alzheimer's, so he was really out of it for a few years before that. So his widow kind of ran the company up until, I think, 1941, and then the government kind of took the machinery, took the men, anyway, it's in here. Then after the war, the widow sold the company to this aeronautical company, and they came up with this. So this is all the nice refined fitment, all the rosewood. They were gone. This was still an expensive tool, but this was more machine made, production made. And I'm sure it looked pretty when it was new because they did all this machine turning on it, and this would have been all black, but it was beech, just painted. So again, I don't rate these very highly, but I had to have one just to show it or just to see it, So this is the bullnose plane, again, for rabbits, for getting into edges. And this is a Norris, so before the war, very stylish, really well fitted. They would polish all the edges. They really went the extra mile. Miter plane, mainly for use on its side, just for fitting miters. I mean, you figure most of the miters in those days were cut by hand. So you would need to fit them
With the hand saw.
with a handsaw or a miter box. But you still, you know, if you're and it was all furniture. You know, it wasn't on a job site. It wasn't a carpenter's plane. These are all cabinet makers, mostly. So this one was meant to use on its side, just like the Stanley number 9 on its side. Or it's got like a hook here you can grab to kind of pull back if you want to fit coming back. Now this is Mark Matheson, but it would have been made by Norris. Bought in. So that's a regular miter plane. This is an improved miter plane. So not to be used on its side because it doesn't have the same depth. It was so you had these finger grips right here and the knob, and I think it was mainly for using it in a miter chop, in a vise. So you were doing miters, but you were doing it like this instead of like this. This is a panel plane. Not a jack plane, but they had this intermediate size they called a panel plane. Why, I don't know. For doing paneling, I don't know. But they called it a panel plane. And this is another panel plane, but with the adjuster. This is a jointer, yeah. Where's the big one? Yeah, I didn't bring many of these because they're just too darn heavy. But this is a Spears. Nice form. Spears had some nice form too. But Spears are more, they weren't as well finished as the Norris. I mean, Norris had an advantage because he was later, so he had more machinery. Spears, not so much. And that's it. There's a shoulder. Again, kind of sexy in form. I like it. Mainly it was meant on its side for truing up shoulders, mortise and tenons. And then there's a rabbet. Where's the rabbet? It was a boxy thing, yeah. The rabbet. But the rabbet has a different angle. That's the main difference between the two. Slightly different angle. Like a higher angle. But to me, they pretty much do the same job. So yeah, Scottish guys are over here. The English guys are over here. Craftsmen over here. And any questions?
Do you consider this a particularly good collection? Or
I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it.
is your family still eating only sardines?
My kids are shoeless, but I'm proud of my collection.
You say this is just a part of what you got.
Yeah, but my wife might be listening, so we got to be careful here.
Do you equal to this back home?
Oh yeah, easily.
Or more?
Easily.
How many do you have total?
A lot. A lot. See, yeah.
Which would you say was like historically most significant?
Well, I'll tell you what. Somebody asked me if there's a fire, what am I grabbing? All right, so I'm grabbing this because it's. I'm Scottish. It's super rare Scotsman. 1840. They're hard to find, really old. And this one. This one is a wooden plane maker in Newcastle, England. But it's just if you stop and look at it, it's just a really well-made plane. The guy did not make many of them. I've seen another one, or I've heard of another one. But it's relatively early, pretty naive in how he built it, but he built it really nice. It's just crisp. It's just, I don't know, I just love it. So those would be the two, if there's a fire, I'll be looking for.
How did they build these planes back in the 1800s? Were they cast?
Well,
Did they finish them with a file, or how did they manage?
Yeah, so I'd say most of them are dovetailed. And the reason they were dovetailed is you can fit the mouth. See, a miter plane, it's like a slit, right? It's only going to take dust. So it's only for fitting miters. And if you want to hog something, get a different plane, right? This is only going to take, I've used it. It's like it's laborious. If you're trying to take a lot of material, it's going to take you forever. So to get that slit, you had to dovetail it. Because casting, I mean, the casters back then were way better than they are now, right? Even with all the machinery, I think they were way better. That's just my opinion. But yeah, a lot of them were cast, but I think the better ones were dovetailed because you could really control the mouth, and the mouth was pretty much everything to get a tight mouth. Not on all planes, obviously, but still the mouth was always a problem with casting. The sand in there and getting the metal everywhere and all that stuff. It's difficult, right? I mean, I'm not a caster, but I know it's difficult.
And once you open up the mouth in a casting, it's hard to get that narrow slit.
Yeah, impossible,
Sometimes
right?
the metal opens up a little bit.
Yeah,
So that's the only way to get it tight.
yeah, yeah.
And without a tight mouth, you don't get a good shape.
Yeah, your blade will grab the grain if it's squirrely grain. These things are made for difficult grain, and if you have an open mouth, then that blade's going to grab, and it can't grab if it's just taking dust.
Because that front edge keeps the blade, it keeps the wood down.
Yeah, it won't let it hook it.
Well, then it'll be-
This one I would say is 1840s, because it's really naive if you look at the way he built it, and it's horrible to work. It's horrible it would have been really uncomfortable. Yeah, it's horrible, but it's had a good use. But I think 1840s, you know. Spear started in 1840, and I think he started pretty soon to that, you know.
What's the earliest plane that you have outside of this one?
A professional maker, yeah. I think the Moons, the Towels, the Moons, and Smith, I think, are the earliest. And then come Badger, and Kerr. Kerr is a Scottish guy that moved to London, and he's I think he's right around 1850. He's pretty early. Gabriel, I think, is probably one of the earliest. Yeah, I don't have any Gabriel, unfortunately, but yeah, he's back to the 1790s, right? 1780s, maybe. Yeah, they're hard to find, Gabriels. Super hard.
These guys that were making these planes in their little backyard shops and stuff, they don't have a lathe, they don't have a milling machine.
No.
How are they getting them square and flat and polished so way? I mean,
I think they did have rudimentary stuff. They had water power. Like some of the early guys, I really don't know. The guys before, like Gabriel, I mean, it's all hand fit. That's why that's the beauty of dovetailing, because you can control the plates, right? Spears I know had steam power. He might have had water power because. No, I think he was steam power.
Right.
And belts, you know, all those belts.
right, so that's for big machinery, but if you're in a little tiny shop, how are they lapping?
They had grinders. They had Spears. There's actually pictures of Spears factory, and it's like this to get around. And there's grinders, flat grinders. Yeah, like my garage.
Plus they're piecing the metal together, so if there's an imperfection, they're beating the metal together, and it's filling the gap.
Yeah, they would have had a form, and they would be making it around the form.
Right.
And Bill Carter is a lateral. He's still making, and he's shown a lot of ways of how he does it. And he makes a lot of miter planes, and he'll bend it around a form, and he'll dovetail it. He'll have everything cut. I mean, a lot of these guys were cabinet makers, making planes for cabinet makers. So they had those skills. They knew how to make a dovetail, and it's very forgiving because that brass, or that even a lot of the steel is not steel but cast. It'll hammer out. You know, it'll hammer out. I've done a little bit of it, and it will hammer out. You have a nail set, like a punch, and you're punching the metal out.
So will they have granite plates that are machined and then lap the steel with grits down to 8,000 grit, I assume?
I think. They had a lot of grinding wheels. You know, if you've seen even the super early saw makers, they did have those big grinding wheels, and they would be water powered earlier on, right? And then steam powered. So right early on, Spears had all that stuff. Yeah. You wouldn't think so, but yeah, I've seen, and like I say, there is pictures of Spears' shop, and it is, yeah, it wouldn't have been a comfortable place to work. Stacked stuff.
Well, it's made, especially for the small makers here and stuff. It's amazing what they were able to.
Oh, the craftsmanship of those guys, and you figure all those guys, they fed them to the guns in World War I. Yeah. You know, it was heartbreaking. Right. Heartbreaking. Yeah, really sad.
There's modern plane makers.
Yeah, Bill Carter. I mean, he has a little shed at the bottom of the garden and an anvil, and he's there's pictures of him ripping boxwood by hand. I don't know why he doesn't get a small table saw, but he's doing it. Yeah.
Bill Carter has a YouTube channel where he shows a lot of this stuff that he's doing in a tiny little shed in his
It's
backyard.
tiny, yeah. I don't know how he doesn't do it in the winter, so he kind of takes the winter off because it's disgusting weather over there, right? Yeah.
Well, Conrad too, his shop's not that neat. But
Yeah, but I'm sure he's got
That's how Bailey started out.
Yeah. A lot of them. That Price. I mean, there's written stories of when they went into Price's shop, and it was literally threadbare. Yeah, with one little foot-powered grinder, and that's what he did it all on. And they're beautiful planes. Beautiful planes. Yeah. Crazy, yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Any more questions? All right, then that's it.
All right, we got lunch being presented right now, and you have 5 more minutes if you want to bid on any silent auction items.
Bid high, bid often.
How do you bid on that stuff? Just right a number?
Especially the 4 cans.
You just write the I'm sure there's like a
I'll try it on my own. I mean, I'll have to get help. Yeah, I'll have to. Yeah. That's cool. I'd like to do it for him, you know. I think. Yeah. We'll build it. It's kind of on a hill a little bit, so we'll build maybe a walkout basement or a drive, you know, something like that. Yeah, that'd be nice. Where is that? In Austin, north of Austin. Oh, nice. Yeah. That's cool.
Austin's a pretty cool town, too.
I like Austin. I like it. It's got a good vibe.
It's very different
Oh,
from
they're
the rest of
massive.
Texas.
They're massive over there. Yeah, massive.
Austin, Texas?
Yeah. Apple have got a huge compound. They've got a huge,
Very different.
almost as much as they've got up north.
Things quite plain today.
Thank you. Plainly speaking, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Take all things in good measure.
Yeah. You bought that?
No, I've had it for a long
Oh, yeah. That's Craftsman made. Yeah.
time. I tuned it up a little. It was rough in here. and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Tuned it up a little. This was mahogany and this was beech.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they would use what they had, I guess, eh? Yeah.
Did you do staining, or is it as you found it?
No, I stained it. No,
You stained
this
it
had
up?
big chips in it and stuff. I cleaned it out, and this was all chipped up. And so I know it probably took away some of the value, but I don't care. I like it.
No, you did it, yeah.
No,
yeah.
you're the owner. You can do as you please.
I find a lot of the ones I find are very rough. So they just got bits missing, or so I love cleaning them up and fixing them up. Like this one over here, this was missing the spur. So this is the spur, right? So this was gone. So I put a new spur on it.
Oh, it looks great.
Now it's mahogany, so it's really hard. See, it's darker. I'm trying to blend it so you don't see it. You can see it if you look for it. Yeah, you can see if you look for it. Yeah.
That was nicely done.
But I didn't. It's like I say, it's hard to blend the new mahogany, which is pretty much crap, right? To the old growth, really nice stuff. Yeah. But I do that. I do that a lot. You know, if it needs, I put new buns in them before. I've done all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
How tough is that to fit that? Not only this curve, but fit it down inside.
It's
nice
not
and
tough.
tight.
It's not tough. I mean, it just takes time. And to try and do it where you can't tell, that's the difficult part. But I've done it. I've nailed it. I can show you some that you might not be able to tell. But yeah, and I'll spend weeks doing it because I'm in. When I come home from work, that's how I decompress. I'll go out there and I'm like tinkering. She gets all pissed off because the dinner's ready. But I love doing it. It kind of chills me out. So yeah, then I'm not screaming at the guys the next day.
What do you use to do the distribute, do you think?
Tool-wise or finish-wise?
Finish-wise, clean with this, and you do like a.
Well, so no, I'll go with shellac. I am not great with the shellac. I'm still learning. Shellac. I'll go with. Yeah, just build up the coats, sand in between, build them up, and then.
The metal just from, you know.
The only thing I'll do the metal. Well, if there's bad rust, I'll take a razor blade and I'll shave it off over the razor blade, and then I'll take steel wool. Yep. And then I'll go with.
A lubricant with that? Is it
No, I'm just using it dry.
Okay.
And then I'll go back with Liberon, because they make colored wax, and it'll put a. Well, sometimes I'll go back with some chemicals, and I'll put a patina back on it. Okay. Like some of these brass ones, I get them and they're all buffed, right? So I want them crisp again. So I'll show you one. Let me put this one back.